This is The Toss-Up, where an expert line panel dissects the hottest stories within the world of sports. From some of the nation's strongest college programs right here in Bloomington to the games and moments that capture the world's attention, it's all right here on The Toss-Up. When you turn on the TV to watch some sort of sporting event, what's the first thing your eye is drawn to? When you're up in the top of the bleachers at a football game, how do you identify which specific player it is that you want to get tackled? And when you eventually lose your March Madness bracket pool, what was that one random factor that your non-sports loving relative used to judge teams that somehow actually worked? The answer, of course, to all these questions is the team's uniforms. We often take them for granted because we see them every day. But uniforms have become so ingrained in sports culture that they can become a part of an entire region's identity. You should never wear red in Lexington, Kentucky, and don't even think about wearing pinstripes in Boston. Gosh. The designs that teams use can be filled with history, and even some of these alternate jerseys are chock full of meaning. So this week on The Toss-Up, we're here to take you through the wild world of team aesthetics and break down some of the best of the best. So hello everybody and welcome to the show. I'm Drew Fry, and joining me on the panel this week, we have Evan Kamiko and Jackson Kenny. Welcome to the show. We're going to get ready and talk about uniforms. And of course, we're just going to start off in the college atmosphere. That's where we are. We're in Bloomington, Indiana, home to Indiana, the Cream and Crimson. So I want to start with you, Evan, and just ask, what are some of the most iconic college uniforms that immediately come to your mind?
I mean, when you say iconic college uniforms, the first things that come to my mind is Michigan, Notre Dame, USC, and Penn State. Those are jerseys that you can see anywhere. The Michigan helmets with the yellow on top and the three stripes in the back, you can recognize them from anywhere in the maize and gold. The second one, Penn State. The navy, the white helmets, you can just see it and you know that's Penn State. And it's the same thing with Notre Dame and USC. USC has that, maroon and gold color that you don't really get. I would say I don't think another team has that color scheme. So I think that those four right there are probably the most iconic college football uniforms.
Okay, I didn't think it was going to happen this early in the show, but I already saw Jackson shaking his head.
I've got a few things. One, Penn State's uniforms very boring. They're classic, but whatever. And then I'm going to sound like a hypocrite here in a second. But then I always get Iowa State confused with USC because they're the same color scheme. So anyway.
Okay, so what are some of your
Alabama,
most iconic ones?
That's an iconic jersey for the same reason Penn State is, but I like them because it's Alabama and it just means more with Alabama, you know?
Oh, gosh.
Then it's just red.
Yeah, it's awesome. With the red helmets with the numbers on the side, that takes you back to Bear Bryant and now Nick Saban. And then a couple of other really iconic ones, Ohio State for sure. And then go back down south a little bit, Texas with the burnt orange and the longhorn on the side of the helmet. You'll always see that, and it'll never go away.
Yeah, and one I want to throw out, and we're discussing SEC schools and just the iconic programs. I mean, at least growing up from my own experience, that Florida Gator orange and blue was recognizable anywhere you go.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, a lot of it's based on the success that we see out of these programs, as you mentioned, whether that be Penn State or Alabama.
Like when you mentioned Florida, you could go anywhere when we were in middle school or getting into high school, and somebody would probably have on a Tim Tebow jersey.
Oh, yeah,
I
exactly.
owned a Tim Tebow jersey.
I had
I'm
a Tim
dead
Tebow
serious.
jersey.
There you go. Yeah, I think that I have an NCAA college football video game with Tim Tebow on the cover. Like,
Yep.
I think
I think
the Florida
has that.
Gators jersey is iconic, as are a lot of these others. And these are the ones that we see sort of day in and day out. But Jackson, I want to go over to you for some of these best alternate uniforms, because that's where some teams really stand out, and especially on the college level. We tend to see it a lot more in football in particular. What are some of the best alternate unis that we've seen across college sports?
Starting in college football, and this is controversial. I loved them when I was a kid, but it was the early 2010s when Nike football did this thing called like combat uniforms or combat ready uniforms. And Florida had one where the entire uniform, jersey and pants, was gator skin. And it was dark green. People hated it, but I thought it was the coolest thing ever. But really, one of the coolest ones, because it was so simple, was Alabama again, because They took the classic houndstooth print off of Bear Bryant's hat, and instead of having white numbers on their maroon jerseys, it was houndstooth print in those numbers. And it was just a simple, wonderful way to pay tribute to their history. Some recent alternates close to our home, Indiana, the IU football team wore the jerseys with the rock print in the numbers and the pants for Haps Rock in Memorial Stadium. That was really classic. And then another example where every team that participated in this tournament in college basketball, they all got alternate uniforms. And Nike does this a lot for their whatever Nike-sponsored school tournaments. But the PK80 tournament for Phil Knight's 80th birthday, every team got a special uniform set. And then whatever rotation of Nike shoes the teams had, they were all black, and the Nike swoosh was in like this weird shiny print to match the reflectiveness of Phil Knight's aviator sunglasses. And it was just such a cool look for every single team.
Yeah, I love when you get those designs that are reflective of something particular, and you mentioned Indiana and Haps Rock. I know Indiana football just announced that they'll have their own camo uniforms coming out sometime soon, and that's to honor IU's relationship with the military.
The USS Indiana
Exactly.
They have the 9 stars.
battleship, the BB-58, that was in World War II. It supported 9 different campaigns or battles in the Pacific Theater during World War II in the United States Marines. And its hull was painted the camo that you see on the jersey. So it's a whole other level of storytelling that Indiana and their athletic department is going for with this uniform.
Yeah, and a little bit of a more modern connection explains why we're having uniforms on this episode. And also, as you can see, our good friend, the Pumpkin here. I just named him the Pumpkin and decided that it is male. But in honor of Halloween, this is where we're going, the uniform route. And I'm just alternate uniforms because I'm starting to dig myself a hole. Evan, what are some of these top alternate uniforms that you've seen?
One of the things that I'm actually surprised you didn't say was Oregon. If you look at Oregon, every week they tend to have a new jersey.
Okay, that's my thing. Every week they have a different uniform.
But they're all alternates, though.
Is it all? Are they all alternates?
I would say most of them are alternates.
Whatever?
They have like they're like the two that they have, like they're green and white, and then they always alternate like a black or a silver, and I think
or
all
a bright
those
yellow.
jerseys, or a bright yellow.
I'd like
They
to
did
argue
the
that
bright
Oregon
yellow.
just ascends over all of the normal conventional rules, and they
Well,
don't.
I mean,
have,
when Nike headquarters is right there, you can do that.
you can do that for sure. They get all the experimental New Jersey fabrics, everything. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, fairly recently they've had the jerseys with the wings on them, the duck wings. They also had the one that basically mimicked their mascot with the orange and the green and the like.
That looked so good.
Yeah, so I mean, Oregon is obviously one of these regular contenders, and going along with Oregon, they have that big yellow O right in the middle of their field. You sort of recognize Oregon's brand all throughout the Pacific Northwest and just around the country altogether. And so, Evan, what are some of these other brands, designs, aesthetics is the keyword that I love to go back to, that you see a lot in college sports right now that are just immediately recognizable?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a lot about, where you can see all the logos and stuff. One of the things that you look at, even with Oregon still, is their basketball court. They have trees all around it. You look at IU, for example, too. We have, the IU in the middle, in the state, right in the middle of Assembly Hall. That's something that you notice right away. The UNC logo, literally huge in the UNC court. You can recognize all of these different logos, and that's what you're talking about.
Right,
that's the school you're at.
And just beyond that, if you're out in public and you see a hat with a big block red O, that's probably Ohio State. If you see a hat with a orange and green U, Miami. All these different logos are just so tied to a certain brand and community, like the Kansas Jayhawk. That might be the most recognizable logo in college sports.
It's up there near the top, I would say. Yeah.
I'd say it's up there.
I'd say it's up there just solely because it is a Jayhawk. Literally nobody else are called the Jayhawks.
Right. And I mean, it's sort of, you mentioned with Miami, like just the letter U has become associated with that school now. I mean, they took an actual
They're
letter.
the U.
Exactly. Ohio State tried to trademark the. We could go into that as well.
That was kind of ridiculous, but I respect the power move.
Yeah.
I liked it. I thought it was funny. I mean, finally Ohio State lost at something. They don't lose at football at all.
Right.
So that was definitely cool. Another thing too is you see, the Golden Gophers have one of, I think, the coolest throwback logo.
Oh, the
actual
smiling gopher.
Smiling gopher. I think that is so underutilized.
I don't know. We were talking about it before the
sports.
show. Arizona State's throwback that they're doing to
Yeah, they have
1975 with the really stylized sun with the letters ASU in the middle of it. That's going to go on their football uniforms and their hockey team's uniforms.
Yeah.
Arizona State hockey quietly is the best looking college hockey team out there.
Yeah, and it's
There
funny
you
because Adidas, all of their uniforms went through like a rebrand. They used to have this terrible, tire track kind of
Yep.
design on it. You saw it on NC State's, Arizona State's, Indiana. I think
Texas
did it.
A&M was
A&M,
really
they all did
noticeable for it.
and they were just bad. And then finally, Adidas said, you know what, we're done with that. Like, no, because a big thing is they need the money, they need people to buy it. No one wants to buy a jersey with tire tracks on it. That doesn't look any good. So when they took that away, I was very happy.
Yeah, and I mean, even outside of uniforms, we see it on courts, on fields. I know the Louisville, the KFC Yum
I
Center,
wanted
the
to bring
Louisville
that
Cardinal
up.
bird is like dunking on the court. That's so much fun to watch. And then, of course, you can look at Eastern Washington University and Boise State University, who
blue
have
field.
the Boise State's got their blue field. Eastern Washington has their bright red field
Yeah,
called the
bright red.
Inferno.
Isn't Eastern Michigan like gray, different shades of gray every
Yeah.
5 yards, which kind of gross. Coastal Carolina, the Chanticleers have like a turquoise field. I think they call it the Ocean. It's actually really cool, but like
Yeah.
everybody's kind of just hopping on that bandwagon that Boise State started. But like, you know what? More creativity is never going to be frowned upon.
Yeah, and
Agreed.
these are things that these college teams have sort of built into their own brands. And we see this throughout college sports. We see it throughout professional sports as well. And so we are going to take a little break, but we're going to discuss a little bit more of that when we get back. So it's coming up after the break. It's time for us to graduate from our college discussion and move out into the pros. So make sure you stick with us. Welcome back to the toss-up. Now let's start back up with into the pros with some of these most iconic jerseys, iconic uniforms, and designs that we've seen. So, Evan, I'm going to start this back with you. And similar to what we were discussing earlier with some of the most iconic, recognizable jerseys brands in college, what are some of those on the professional level?
I mean, right away, I think of the Green Bay Packers, the Chicago Bears, the 49ers. Those are logos that you can see and you know exactly what they are. And if we're talking about, jerseys like that, it's the same thing with those kind of jerseys, is that you see and you recognize them. But for the kind of alternate jerseys, those are, they still have them, but you don't see the teams who have a long history having as many alternate jerseys as the teams who don't have a long history. So I think that's something that really differs, the older teams versus the more newer teams and the expansion teams.
Yeah, I think a lot of the recognizable logos, jerseys out there, you've mentioned a lot of football teams, the Dallas Cowboys, obviously just that star is immediately recognizable. Jackson, within the NFL but also across other sports, what do you think are some of those just iconic brands?
You covered pretty much everything in the NFL, so I'm going to branch out a little bit. Go to hockey immediately. The original 6 teams, the Blackhawks, the Red Wings, the Maple Leafs, the Canadiens, they all have beautiful uniform sets that have been around for, close to 100 years now? And then other hockey teams as well. I mean, Tampa Bay has a nice, solid look with a nice, solid logo. Dallas Stars, ignoring their new alternate jersey they just ignored, which is black with bright green lettering. They have a good green jersey that looks pretty good. The Minnesota Wild are a beautiful-looking team. Moving out of hockey, this one's going to throw you for a curveball.
Oh,
I didn't tell you this. Go to the world of NASCAR. Look at that number 3, the black car, the Intimidator, Dale Sr. You see a number 3 with any black color around it, you know it's Dale Sr.,
Yeah.
Jeff Gordon and the Rainbow Warriors, their team's nickname was literally their uniform.
Right.
They would wear rainbow-colored pit crew uniforms, and the car was colored like a rainbow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
NASCAR is definitely a different angle to take with this, but I think you're right. There are very much those brands that are built up there.
It's not so much a uniform, but just the way the car is painted. Because you look at a car and you know, okay, it's got a rainbow or it's got flames on it. That's Jeff Gordon. There's an all-black car with silver trim. That's Dale Sr. There's a red car with Budweiser on the hood. That's Dale Jr., You
Yeah.
look at some of these drivers and you know, okay, that's who that is. That's who they've always been.
Yeah, and I mean, since you get to touch on your NASCAR, I'm going to touch on my baseball a little bit. Obviously, I mean, you got to start with the big one is the New York Yankees. Those pinstripes are recognizable everywhere.
Can I make a hot take real quick?
Oh, I'd love for you to make a hot take real quick.
The Yankees, they're obviously classic, the pinstripes, whatever, but they're not even the best uniforms in New York. the Mets have better uniforms than the Yankees.
Interesting.
Better colors.
Maybe 10 years ago, I'd say.
The pinstripes on the Mets jerseys look better than the pinstripes on the Yankees jerseys. And then every other team with pinstripes, like the Cubs, I don't know. The Mets just have the best pinstripe uniforms in the league, and I will die with that opinion.
See, I think the Mets have the more dynamic color scheme, but I think when you're just looking at the straight navy pinstripes, that is
for
immediately
iconic,
the New York
yeah,
Yankees.
we know
yes.
it's the Yankees. I was just saying the Mets look better.
Okay, yeah, I can understand
Plus,
that.
like, they've been around for a while, too, with those uniforms. I mean, Tom
Oh, yeah.
Seaver pitched in the Mets pinstripes.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And I mean, as we've mentioned, the length of a dynasty is a factor in it. The Chicago Cubs, the Boston Red Sox, Los Angeles Dodgers, all of those are immediately recognizable. Sticking in baseball, I love just the colors of the Orioles and the Marlins. I think those are just bright and vibrant.
I
Orioles
don't like
have-
the Marlins, though.
You don't like the Marlins?
I don't. I think that the black jerseys are cool, but I think that the coloring in the letters, like that, it's not like they're colored in the letters. They have like that outline, the blue,
trim.
and red, the trim. I just don't think you can read them good, and I think that completely ruins a very cool jersey.
I
that the
liked when they
Marlins
had
have.
the orange jerseys, like, earlier in the decade. The orange
didn't like it.
jerseys with the blue outlines and that
the
color
yellow
set.
and
And then
the
they
very
moved into this
fluorescent
one
colors. Yeah,
where it's kind of a more serious look, almost an edgier look. It's
I
kinda
like the
weird.
edgier look
Yeah.
for the Marlins.
And then you brought up the Orioles. They have never had a bad uniform, ever have had a bad uniform.
Yeah, the Orioles are always fun. That bright orange. And going back to what we were talking about earlier, some of these alternates in college, Jackson, in the same regards, there are plenty of alternate uniforms that we've seen professional teams pull out. What are some of your favorites?
Right now, my favorite has to be the Oakland Athletics with their bright Kelly green jerseys that they wear during day games, I believe. Instead of their home whites or road grays, just this bright Kelly green, beautiful uniform. And then sticking in baseball, the Reds Sunday alternates where it's the all red jersey with the Reds and script across the chest. That looks really nice. Kind of throwing it out there over across the pond is soccer. Manchester United always seems to have a nice third jersey outside of their normal home and away set where their home is always the iconic red shirt and with whatever design they've chosen that year, and then their away jersey. But they've always had some really nice navy blue, even zebra stripe third jerseys over for Manchester United.
Yeah, and Evan, same question for you.
Some of my favorite alternate jerseys are any powder blue baseball jersey. I
Yeah,
think
that's
those
a
are
good
so
one.
That's a very
slept on.
good pick.
I think if you look at, I'm a Cubs fan, so even saying this kind of hurts me a little bit. But the Cardinals powder blue jerseys are incredible. I think those are.
But
so
they aren't even the
cool.
best powder blue jerseys. in
No,
the
the
league.
Blue Jays I think have
No,
the
no,
best
no.
powder
The
blue
Twins have
jerseys.
the best one.
I like the Blue Jays better. I just think it's cleaner.
That's fair. I'm just a sucker for the golden red
Yeah,
outlining.
I
that they
give you
have
the
on
gold.
the-
I
on the
like they
powder
did a
blue.
jersey. They did the navy blue Twins jerseys with the gold trim. I thought that looked really good. I was a really big fan of those. But I think nothing in baseball beats a powder jersey.
That's a fair point. I can live with that. Sure.
And I agree with you on the Kelly Green jerseys. I think that's awesome. I want the Philadelphia Eagles, the football
They
team, to
should
go back to
definitely
the
go
Kelly
back to
Green.
that.
Yep.
But I think that nothing beats a powder blue baseball jersey, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can understand that. And while we're sticking on baseball, I love some of the non-conventional ones. I know the Reds played a spring training game on St. Patrick's Day, was it?
Oh,
They were the Cincinnati
the green
Greens.
Reds jersey.
Yeah, where they became green.
Or they were last year, 2019, for their 150th anniversary. They were like something 25 throwbacks throughout the year, and a lot of them were sleeveless, so their players would just go out there with no undershirt,
Yeah.
wearing a tank top baseball jersey.
I always remember seeing the picture of Puig and Dietrich wearing those jerseys, just standing there. I was like, God, those guys are
Dietrich
so
was in the
intimidating.
dugout lifting
Oh,
weights
yeah.
with the jerseys on.
Oh yeah, and one more that I'll at least throw out. This is actually league wide is Jackie Robinson Day. Everyone wearing 42. I think that is considered
This year
an
they
alternate
had a
jersey.
nice little detail. I talked to you about it. We were watching
Yeah.
the games. Usually they'll have like a 42 patch on the side of the hats or on the sleeve of the jersey. This year, instead of a conventional one where it's the Dodgers blue 42, they did the 42 in the numbers and the fonts of the teams they were on. So the Reds, very stylized font, they had the 42 in that font on the side of the hat and the jersey patch. And it was just really nice to see the league pay that much attention to detail in that design.
Yeah, and while we're still talking about the pros and just these designs that way, a little off of the uniforms, just any other aspects of design or aesthetic to throw it out again professionally, what stands out to you, Jackson?
I'll stick in Cincinnati for a second. Out in their outfield, they have two big smokestacks that look like they came off of a riverboat, paying tribute to the city of Cincinnati's history. The Minnesota Wild have a light tower in their arena that blows a big foghorn when they score a goal because it's just what the area is. I think the Lightning have one of the coolest. When the players come out for their intros or they score a goal, they have a Tesla coil hanging from the ceiling of the arena that shoots out live lightning bolts in over the entire crowd, and it's just incredible.
Oh yeah, that would be a sight to see. And Evan, what are some notable like features, designs for you?
Yeah, I mean, you look at baseball. You have the Ivy in Wrigley Field, the Green Monster in Fenway, McCovey Cove in San Francisco, and then if you switch to kind of other sports, you look at in Cincinnati, you have the Bengals all on the walls. It's a jungle. We were talking about this a little earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also have other really iconic things in a lot of the stadiums worked in. You have in Pittsburgh again. If you go to the PNC Park, you have the bridge right behind it, Heinz Field. You have the ketchup bottle and the mustard in the back. I just think those are some really cool.
Football
different
has
things.
some of the weirdest things because they integrate their sponsors into their stadiums a lot. Like Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, they have a ton of different race cars and dirt racers and drag cars in the state throughout the stadium, and like they really stylize it to be like that.
And I think the advertisements too, if we're talking about this quickly, they kind of ruin and like not ruin NBA jerseys, but like NBA jerseys without the advertisements. That's what people want to buy. And then you see them on TV. Obviously, you're gonna have advertisements on the jerseys.
See, I don't think it's a big deal because like I buy soccer jerseys with the advertisement right on the chest. So like having a little patch up here, it's like whatever, okay. But like the NBA, they do need to be brought up just because of their alternate city jersey program. They have some teams are beautiful, like the Utah Jazz with their sunset uniforms, where they have the Adobes on the court on their design, and that's
Denver
a beautiful
Nuggets.
uniform. The Pacers have a wonderful one with the finish line down the side for the Indy 500 in the city. It's really cool to see some of these teams pay tribute to where they're from with storytelling on their uniforms.
Yeah, I mean, you see that a lot in the NBA. I know Los Angeles and Miami played a game where both of them were wearing Spanish jerseys. Like,
And that's a lot of leagues do that.
Yeah.
Where they have the team name in Spanish on across the chest, and it's really cool to see.
Yeah, I think Golden State did one with
Golden State has
Chinese,
one for Chinese,
like Mandarin. Yeah. Yeah, so it's really interesting to see in that regard. And yeah, I mean, you mentioned in baseball, the Green Monster. Baseball's so interesting in that it's one of the few like rare sports where you can, the dimensions of your playing field is different depending on where you go. Like imagine if you're in the NFL and it's like that's an 85-yard rush that would have been a touchdown in 27 out of 32 stadiums, but here that one just doesn't make it.
And I think there's so much more to baseball, too, because baseball stadiums, like I said to people who are like, oh, baseball is boring. I'm like, you don't always just go for the game. You go for the experience. You go to be at a baseball stadium.
The atmosphere.
Because each stadium is so unique where, NFL stadiums are also unique. NBA, arenas are all that is unique. But, like, at baseball, it's all about the experience. The food is different everywhere. And, they incorporate their city so well. I was at, the Mets game a couple years ago, and they built, like, a little city field where kids could play wiffle ball on, and I thought that was really cool. And the food, you eat different food in New York and Chicago and Miami, and I think they're serving they were serving grasshoppers in Seattle,
yeah,
which is crazy to think about.
Like in New York, I bet it's a
something
bunch of like street food. You get giant pizza slices. In Tampa at Rays games, they have the whole selection of Cuban food. It's awesome. Cincinnati's got a bunch of barbecue and just Midwestern stuff.
Yeah, it's all a touch back to their region. And so we were talking about alternates throughout the show, and that's going to take us into our first of our quick-fire questions. So for quick-fire, we're just going to try and keep these answers 30 seconds or less. But Jackson, I'll start with you, and I want to ask about an alternate uniform, maybe a throwback.
Okay.
What would be the first throwback that you can think of that you would like to see returned back in
any sport or
in any sport? This is across all levels, across all leagues. This could be minor league rookie ball if you want it to be.
I'll give you two. I want any Indiana throwback to come back because Indiana's throwbacks in the past few years have been great because they threw back last year for the 150th anniversary game to an older time where they had a real old stylized IU on the helmet. They wore a basketball uniform last year. That was to pay homage to when integration was happening in college basketball, and it was the uniforms they wore around that time, and they were really well done and looked really great on the court. Another one I'd like to see, and we might get to, I don't know, it just depends, is in NASCAR every year there's a throwback weekend where the cars are painted in throwback paint schemes.
Right.
And any old Dale Jr. scheme coming back would be great, especially the number 8 that he drove. That stylized font of the 8 has been tied up in lawsuits and legal matters and trademarks for so long. I just want to see that back on the track at least once.
Yeah. And Evan, what about you? We're going to try and trim this 30 seconds or less, but the best throwback. That wasn't a dig at Jackson, but yes.
I'm going to go with the Toronto Raptors purple dinosaur jersey. I think that absolutely has to come back. The Milwaukee Bucks throwback, the Ray Allen ones with the actual deer on it. And the last one I'm going to give you is going to be probably, I'd love to see the Chicago Bulls with the script Chicago again, the ones that Michael Jordan used to wear. I think those are very clean. I think the Chicago and script is really nice, and I just think it all goes together, and we haven't seen that recently.
Yeah, and just for my piece, I want to throw out, there's a little bit of finding a loophole, but Montreal Expos, they could get their team back, maybe.
Dude, don't even bring that. That makes me so sad.
Okay, all right, we'll move on from that
World
before we set Jackson off. Evan, our next question is, of all these jerseys that you've seen, it could be for any period of time, modern or historic, which has been your least favorite?
I would go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers ones that they just switched away from. Would have to come up in my head as disgusting. Those are jerseys where the alarm clock lettering looks horrible. I think they just tried to do too much with the brown and the orange and the red and the white. It was just way too much trying to put on one jersey. So I think that's probably the worst jersey of recent history.
Yeah, Jackson, what about you?
Ohio State wore a weird gray triangle
one with
camo
like the stripes
jersey.
and stuff. Yeah,
that was just ugly as sin, and I hope it never comes back. And it just makes it so much worse that they win in such ugly uniforms sometimes. They do great things with their alternates, but geez, man.
Yeah, so what about teams that maybe win in great uniforms? Last quickfire question. What is your favorite, the best uniform of all time?
It's actually going to be one that I haven't brought up tonight, and that's North Carolina's simple Carolina blue with the Argyle up the sides. You can't beat it.
Yeah, that one's hard to beat. Evan?
Yeah, I think my favorite jersey of all time has got to be the throwback Utah Jazz jersey with the purple and the one that we have on the table right now. I think that one's just, it just works all the colors out so well. And I love using purple in different colors that you don't see too often in jerseys, because every jersey seems to be blue, red, or white. So to see different colors is awesome.
Yeah, and there's plenty of others that we haven't touched on. I mean, we could throw out the Raiders. They're
silver and black.
They're silver and black's iconic.
The Padres going back to brown.
Exactly. One that we didn't even discuss has a song named after it. You know what it is, Black and Yellow.
Oh, goodness.
Pittsburgh. I'm sorry. I had to throw that reference out.
I've been trying to avoid talking about Pittsburgh
I
this whole
figured.
time.
I had to throw it out. But I don't know a better way to end the show than on that note. So that will do it for our show this week. But be sure to continue the discussion on our Twitter page at IUSTV Sports and on Instagram at IUSTV Sports. You can give any suggestions for the show, ask any questions that you might have, and tell us what you think. Who are some of your favorite and least favorite jerseys that you've seen? So toss it up, find out if we'll catch it, and we'll see you next time.